Good morning. This is a video with a difference. I want to talk about like a podcast that I really like. If you've ever seen the TV series Ted Lasso, there is a character on there called Roy Kent, and he's played by a guy called Brett Goldstein. And Brett Goldstein is a stand-up comedian, and he's a writer, and he's an actor, and he also hosts a podcast, and the podcast is called Films to be Buried With. Now, I'm really a big fan of movies. The premise is that he invites a guest on and he tells them that they've died, and when they go to heaven, heaven is a place which is basically their whole lives revolve around film. So basically they want to know about the people through the films that they've seen, so they ask them a series of questions, and for every guest that's on, it's always the same questions. So I'm going to do that.
Now, shall we begin?
What's the first film that you remember seeing? The first film I remember seeing was probably a film I saw on TV, which was probably The Wizard of Oz. It used to be on like regular as clockwork every Christmas Day, Christmas morning. You'd watch The Wizard of Oz, and I remember that. Probably was in single digits. Well, first film that I saw at the cinema was, it was a double bill. It was in 1970, well, it was probably early 79. And it was a double bill of The Thief of Baghdad with Roddy McDowall. And the other film was Spider-Man. But I think I've researched this, and it was called Spider-Man Strikes Back. Which was it was a TV movie. It was like a couple of episodes of the TV series edited together to make a movie, and yeah, it had Nicholas Hammond in it. And I don't remember anything about the film. I don't think I've ever seen it in a good long time. But all I remember of The Thief of Baghdad was I think Terence Stamp is in it, and he's like the big bad. And I want to say that, like, there's a scene in which his head cracks open like an egg. That's what I think. So yeah, that was the first film that I saw at the cinema. What's the film that scared you the most? Easy one. American Werewolf in London. If you were a child of the 80s, you saw everything on videotape, and you were basically you saw everything too young, and I was too young when I saw American Werewolf in London. I was about 10 or 11, and it scared the bejesus out of me. And there's the scenes where he's having sort of there's all these nightmare scenes in it early on, like this is before he becomes the werewolf, and there's a scene with like Nazi zombies, and there's a scene where he's like, I think, trying to hunt a deer in the forest, and he sees himself in a bed, and when he wakes up in the bed, he's got the eyes and the teeth, and that scared the crap out of me. Absolutely did. I mean, I have seen it since. It's now one of my favourite films, and the more you see it now, the more you realise that it ain't scary. It's funny. It's hilarious. It's fantastic. It turns into some stupid comedy. And god damn it, I love that film. Hopefully, I would like to think that I was an adult now and I could take it, but I'm not sure. What was the film that made you cry the most? Well, I have two. One is Senna, the documentary about Ayrton Senna, the Formula One racing driver. He was killed in 1994. I remember watching the race at Imola, and I think the film gets up to around about the point where Professor Sid Watkins pronounces him dead, and I think I lose it. then. It's still incredibly emotional. The second one is the Jim Carrey film Man on the Moon, which is about the life of Andy Kaufman. That one, I think, was like, I watched it in sort of early 2000. It had been like 6 months after my friend Rob died, and basically I knew that there was something wrong with me and I needed to get help, and that's when I got diagnosed with depression. So and I got help for it, and I got medication and stuff like that. So yeah, that was kind of like a catalyst. It was just one of those things where I was watching a film and then 5 minutes later I was sobbing in in my bedroom. It was awful. And I consider that like a moment in my life where I definitely knew that I needed to talk to somebody. What film is terrible but you love it? I enjoy a good bad movie. So yeah, Jason Statham in Crank is incredible, bonkers, and it's horrifically and offensively violent. But yeah, I mean, there are other films in that ilk. I wouldn't say that Big Trouble in Little China was a bad film, but I think that it is underappreciated, and I still think it's probably one of John Carpenter's best, and I love that film. It still holds up to this day.
See? That was nothing. But that's how it always begins. Very small.
Film which I did like but doesn't quite hold up anymore. Okay, the film is Blake Edwards' Skin Deep. Now, I've not watched this film in full for a long time, but I think the thing is that it was made in 1989. It was supposed to be like, he was, the main character played by John Ritter is like a lovable rogue, but he actually isn't. He's like an alcoholic womanizer, and so therefore nowadays he would be in all sorts of therapy, and he would be diagnosed as a sex addict as well as an alcoholic. But there are some really, really amusing scenes in that. There's two. There's one involving glow-in-the-dark condoms, which I can't actually adequately describe, and there's another one involving, you know, like those muscle tension electrode things. It's one like that, and it's a fantastic bit of physical comedy. However, he's as much as sort of the component parts of the film are still funny, I think that the overall message of the film completely does not hold up for me. What is the film that means the most to you? Not because of the film itself, but because of the memory you have of it. Have to say, With Nell and I. The reason being is because that film was introduced to me by my late friend Rob Turner, I remember we watched it in his flat, and we just couldn't stop giggling all the way through it. It was so brilliantly funny, and and the film, it's still one of my favourites to this day, and I love watching it. But the memory of when we first watched it in his flat, giggling like children, is still kind of ingrained, and I think of that every time I watch it still.
Here are your aerials. They pick up signals from the cosmos and transmit them directly into the brain. This is the reason bald-headed men are uptight.
What absolute twaddle.
What is the sexiest film you've ever seen? Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I saw it when I was quite young, so but again, it's quite successful, like a sexy film, and yeah, I think we all relate to I think Judge Reinhold's character Brad is a character that we relate to, and yeah. There are a few things nicer than Phoebe Cates in a red bikini.
Hi, Brad.
There is a subcategory to that question, which is which film would you find arousing and you weren't sure that you should have, and I would probably put any Bond film. But the Bond film I would choose is Diamonds Are Forever. Yeah. The reason being that I mean, when you're sort of probably less than 10 years old, you probably find anything with sexy ladies in it arousing, but you're not quite sure why. So yeah, Diamonds Are Forever is the one for me. I think very much unsung, but Plenty O'Toole is a really great Bond girl and a fantastic name.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Plenty.
But of course you are.
Plenty O'Toole.
Named after your father, perhaps?
What is the film that you relate to the most? I've got two for this. The first is a film called Adventures of Power, which is it was, when I saw it I was like, did they just like download my brain and make this film just for me? So that's what I thought. Basically the premise of the film is about a guy who is obsessed with air drumming, and yeah, and he enters like an air drumming competition and stuff. The whole film is basically about how music affects people, and how basically, you know, life without music would be really terrible, boring. You know, there would be nothing to it. And that's what I love about that film. And I remember watching it and I'm thinking, did they make this film for me? I think so. I think they made it just for me. It features the music of Rush, who I absolutely love. So there's that. So the other choice that I have is Gregory's Girl, the Bill Forsyth. And I think the reason that I relate to that one is because I was a teenager in the 80s, and that's what it was like. Like the last sort of half an hour of that film is basically what it was like during the summer months. Those long summer evenings that just seem to last forever after you finish school, and that's like the last half an hour of that film. Which film is objectively the greatest ever? I'm going to nick my answer from my wife Donna, because I talked about this. Actually, it could be one of, well, everybody says Goodfellas. I was considering saying that, but I think you have to put in The Matrix. I remember watching that film and thinking, I've never seen a film like that before, and I don't think I've ever come out of seeing a film since then where basically is absolutely blown away. And if you remember, this was like about a month before Phantom Menace came out, and I think I was just kind of thinking, I don't think I'm ever going to see a film like that ever again, and that's why, to me, it is objectively one of the best. But also a special mention to the film Heat, with the Michael Mann film with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. That film is incredible. Which film have you watched the most? The film I've seen the most has to be RoboCop. It's one of those ones that I can watch endlessly and not get tired of it. I've seen it so many times. I actually can't count how many times I've seen it, but it is one of those ones that I will actually throw on every now and then and watch. And every time I watch it, it still kind of resonates, and I always remember how it was when I first saw it. First time I'd ever seen anything from RoboCop was on Barry Norman's film. I want to say film 87. It may have been 88, because even though the film came out in 1987 in the US, it was released over there. It was back in that time that we had to wait 6 months before a film would come out in the UK. So I think it came out early 88. It definitely came out on video in 88 because it was the most rented video. But I remember seeing the Ed 209 scene on Barry Norman's film, let's say it's 87, film 87. And I was like, they can't show that on TV, on regular TV. Well, literally it was late at night, but it was really, it kind of did leave an impression on me. And when I did finally get to see the whole film, it was my good friend Tim. I'm still friends with his brother Pete. We've been friends for 40 odd years, and so hi Pete if you're watching. But he worked at an off license, and they had, and every off license in the 80s had a video shop, and so therefore you would rent videos out from there. And we rented. He basically put it to one side under the counter for us to rent at the end of the day, and he brought it home. I think it was about, he brought it home at something like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and we stayed in his parents' living room. We watched the film. So it finished about 11 o'clock, and then we rewound it and watched it again straight away. And that is why I can watch that film over and over. What is the worst film you've ever seen? The worst film I've ever seen is a film called Razorblade Smile. It was recommended to me, which is what makes it worse. I think it was like, it's basically, the plot is that the main protagonist is a part seductress, part vampire, no, all vampire, part assassin. Oh, it was awful. It was really awful. It was one of those things that was just like, I think that they tailored it to a particular demographic of people that like sort of metrosexual vampire with lots of nudity and violence and stuff like that, and it was absolutely with no merit whatsoever. And what's even worse is the fact that the ending of the film is like is a WWF style heel turn, where it turns out that the main person was the bad guy all along. Oh my god. There is another one to this, and that film is Battlefield Earth. 2 hours of why Scientology is bunk. Basically, all of the characters try to basically blackmail each other, and that's kind of the crux of what Scientology is. When you go those auditing sessions, they basically record your innermost secrets and then basically blackmail you for money. And that's what happens in that movie. The main character, played by John Travolta, insists on recording stuff to get leverage over people, and that's if you take a drink every time the word leverage is mentioned in that film, you will be very drunk by the end of it. you laugh the most? I have three. One is Team America World Police. There's nothing like seeing a film with all your friends. Yeah. And there's nothing like, so basically when the laughter is so really infectious, it, you know, it tends to make you laugh more. And for the same reason, I'm gonna pick, Spaceballs, because I remember seeing that at the cinema in '87. And also I'm going to pick Austin Powers, the first one, International Man of Mystery. And the thing about Austin Powers was I remember seeing it, I saw it at the cinema and we bought 2 tickets. We bought one to see Austin Powers, and the second ticket was the film that we seen right after it, and it was the Full Monty. And I remember everybody everywhere was talking about how great the Full Monty was, and I came out of that day, my takeaway from that day was like, I really enjoyed Austin Powers. It was fantastic and I liked it more.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.